Course 4, Neuromotor Function and Social Cognition. Welcome to Week 4, Overview of Social Cognition. This week, we will begin thinking about the construct of social cognition, and we will address the following learning objectives. First, we'll work on understanding components and vocabulary related to social cognition as defined in the neurodevelopmental framework. And also, we'll demonstrate knowledge of how social cognition can impact student learning in the classroom. Here we go. Okay, so broadly, social cognition is defined very simply. It's defined as just thinking about relating to other people. And as Dr. Craig Pullman described in his video, social cognition includes both verbal and nonverbal dimensions. So verbal pragmatics, as a reminder, involves the use and the understanding of language within social contexts, and nonverbal pragmatics is focused more on the behaviors and nonverbal tactics that foster optimal relationships with others. So, of course, these two dimensions work in concert to support each other within individuals who have a strength in social cognition. However, for individuals with weak social cognition, it can be really helpful to keep the distinctions between these two dimensions in mind so that you can hone in on the most pressing challenges and identify the best possible supports. So it's entirely possible that a person could have a strength in verbal pragmatics and a weakness in nonverbal pragmatics, or vice versa. So having a kind of working way of thinking about these two different dimensions of social cognition can help teachers start to unpack where the challenges are emerging from in student experiences and the kinds of supports that will best help them participate with their peers and in class. So on the next several slides, I'm going to talk you through the 6 components of social cognition that we're going to use to think about the construct within this course. And before I show you those, I just want to point out that the intention of thinking about these components is by no means to summarize social cognition or to compartmentalize aspects of the construct, but instead, thinking about each of the 6 components individually gives us a chance to have kind of develop a sense of these lenses through which we can observe students to understand which features of social cognition are presenting the most difficulties and or which features represent strengths and hold potential to support students or leverage their strengths to support weaknesses. Okay, so here we go. The first 2 components of social cognition are comprehending how complex emotions operate and recognizing emotions in ourselves and in others. So interacting with others to offer social support or engage in conversation and play depends in large part on comprehending the emotions themselves and recognizing the signs and signals of these emotions in the moment. Students who have weaknesses in these 2 components often seem insensitive or inappropriate when they're interacting with friends or peers in the classroom. So for example, a student with difficulty comprehending and recognizing the emotion of frustration may laugh at another student's struggle or react angrily when a friend jokes or kids around. On the other hand, a student with a strength in these components could really shine as a caring individual among peers or appear to be an excellent listener when others are speaking. So these students may also exhibit strength in interacting with adults and engaging in these kind of grown-up-like conversations about feelings, emotions, and friendships. It may be helpful here just to take a moment and see if you can think about students that you know that represent some of these, that either represent a strength or represent a weakness along each or both of these dimensions. Sometimes putting a face to the component can really help you keep in mind what are the distinctions among the components of social cognition and what it looks like for a student who exhibits a strength or a weakness. And in this construct in particular, I really encourage you to think about both students challenged in social cognition and those that have a strength in social cognition, because very often students who have a weakness in another one of the constructs that impacts their learning in a very direct way, like language or attention or memory, quite often those students look to social cognition as a space or a dimension through which they can develop strength and really shine. So sometimes a student with a weakness in memory has a way of kind of obscuring those problems by being very social, very in tune with emotions, and very able to connect with others. And sometimes those compensatory strategies that students have for weaknesses and other constructs start to contribute to building up strength in social cognition. Okay. So the next two slides we'll think about are understanding another's perspective and then just general interpersonal understanding. So these two components are also linked, as were the components on the last slide, since understanding another person's perspective is really fundamental to general interpersonal understanding. So, of course, young children can have difficulty understanding perspective for developmental reasons. But if an older elementary, middle school, or high school student struggles with taking perspective of another person, it's possible that real social challenges will emerge. It can constrain students' abilities to predict how peers will react to behaviors or comments, and can also challenge interpretations of the social feedback among peers and classmates. So for older students struggling with these components, direct work to take on a perspective from someone else's side can be really helpful. For example, paying explicit attention to an author's or character's perspective in literature can support social understanding. Opportunities to role play and debate support social understanding. And then for students who have strengths in these components, taking on perspectives or unpacking perspectives that might be embedded in primary source materials or textbook materials can really give those students an opportunity to use an existing strength in social cognition to connect to academic content in a very sophisticated way. At the same time, students with strengths in these components may really enjoy and have success with the same kinds of activities that the other students struggle with. So things like role play and author's voice or crafting a persuasive essay might provide opportunities for students with social cognition strengths to really draw upon the knowledge they've developed through their social interactions to complete these assignments and classroom tasks. And again, to the extent that a student demonstrates a strength in social cognition, but a weakness in another academic area, for example, expressive language, or as we've been talking about, graphomotor function, giving that student an assignment in which they can draw upon that social strength of perspective taking or role playing may be very motivating, interesting, and exciting to that person to be able to demonstrate something that they have a strong knowledge base, which may encourage them to persist through the struggles that they encounter in the other constructs. On this slide, we have components 5 and 6. And these are the last two components of social cognition that I'll introduce you to here. And number 5 is managing the initiation, rate, intensity, and duration of social interaction. And the other is perceiving one's effects on others. So as I mentioned on the first of these slides I showed you, it can be really helpful to see if you can take a moment and think about a person, a student ideally, but even an adult will work, who might struggle with these two components, right? So someone who's not necessarily as skilled or it's not as smooth in how that person manages their interactions through initiation, rate, intensity, and duration, or someone who doesn't seem to really pick up on their effect on others. At the same time, if you can think of a person who really shines in these two component areas, that can help you start to make sense of the ways these components operate for individuals. So students who have difficulty managing the initiation, rate, intensity, and duration of social interactions may occur to peers as rude, strange in some way, or like annoying. You might hear other kids describe this person as. Similarly, students who struggle to pick up on how their behaviors are affecting peers can be interpreted by peers as insensitive, as bullying, or as just generally socially unappealing. So for these students, direct attention to these components within a safe, nurturing, and supportive environment is really key. Making these components of social cognition explicit for students can really help the ones that are challenged in them. But it's important also that peers are able to make space for others who are working on developing and growing in this area without having to have the fear of ridicule. So creating a classroom environment that supports diversity of all kinds becomes important once again. And I know we talked about that last week in terms of neuromotor function diversity. And so for those students who struggle with a sense of being awkward in space, or students who are struggling with the fine motor or graphomotor function in particular, the kinds of ways of organizing a classroom such that those students are able to participate meaningfully also can have a really strong impact on students who are working on developing social skills, which are similar to neuromotor function, quite public skills in terms of interactions with peers when you're at school. And those are also skills that, when they are weak, subject students potentially to multiple experiences of humiliation and frustration at school. So it's particularly important to be sensitive to making sure that the classroom environment is one in which students are able to take those risks. Okay. So this slide shows you your assignments for the week, and please keep these components in mind as you complete the assignments. There are 3 assignments this week, but they are not terribly long, so hopefully it won't place undue demands on anyone's time. If it becomes something that you feel you can't complete in time, as always, please contact me directly. The first assignment is a quick write, so you're not asked to write too much. Just think about social demands at school, put some ideas down in our quick write forum, hopefully by Wednesday or Thursday, and then respond to 2 other ideas directly, or kind of present a quick, short summary of what you picked up on when reading other people's posts. Then you have a social cognition viewing template activity. So this link, Math as a Social Activity, will take you to a lesson, the math lesson, that has a lot of social demands embedded. And then you'll be asked you can click on the assignment link that's posted on our Moodle page. Within that, you can click on it and download a social cognition template to use while you're viewing that video, Math as a Social Activity, and then you'll turn in that template as your assignment for the week. So all you need to do is go into the assignment, click on the template, download the template, and then the template will present those 6 components of social cognition I just showed you. When you're viewing the 8-minute lesson, Math as a Social Activity, I will ask you to interpret features of the lesson in terms of those 6 components, and that's what you'll submit. And then we also have the learning activity assignment part 2 due at the end of this week, and that involves writing just a few sentences to add on and build upon part 1 that you have turned in last week, or this week. So what you're asked to do is think about your target student once again in terms of social cognition, and then add on to the description of that student. And that's it. I hope you enjoy a few days before I see you at our GoToMeeting session on Wednesday at 6 o'clock, and I will look forward to our talk then. Bye-bye.